Hey y'all, it's your girly man Rimawi Daster with another episode of my so-called disabled life. It's been a couple weeks. There's been all kinds of shenanigans going on, and as we know, if you shenan once, you are gonna shenan again, and that's how the world's working these days, which is hilarious to me, but not hilarious in a way that's like, oh yay, we're doing fun things. It's hilarious, like, oh snap, people are being killed in the street. Uh-oh, what the hell's going on with that? So it's wild. So for this new year, we have some brand new, amazing conversations with folks, and I wanted to meet some new people. So we're meeting some new people. So I am so happy to introduce y'all to Sarah Elizabeth Weill Jones. Um, and they are currently a senior at Haverford College. They are a classics major and a health studies minor, as well as Haverford's student body co-president. Simultaneously, they work in the college Access and Disability Service Office and on the Student Event Accessibility Committee as the co-founder and chair. Snap, snap, yo. That's awesome. They're also a disability justice and accessibility specialist at Mentor a Promise, a New York City nonprofit leading their disability justice team. Hell yeah, girl, hell yeah. Sarah's passion for disability justice has fueled their work in entering the public interest law sector, where they have had summer internships at the Legal Clinic for the Disabled and the Delaware Community Legal Aid Society. Upon graduation, Sarah hopes to continue work in the public law sector, working as a paralegal or client advocate in either civil office or public defense office. In their spare time, they are an avid Dungeons and Dragons player and Magic the Gathering player. Hell yeah. Oh my gosh. Hell yeah. Hello.
Hi, thank you for having
So
me.
so happy you are here with us. Wow. So who is Sarah and why do you do what you do?
Wow, that's right in it with with the big questions. Um, well, hi, I'm Sarah. You gave me a great introduction. Um, Outside of all of my advocacy work, I would say I am a fierce advocate and a passionate friend. And I'm a giant nerd. Anytime I have a break from school, you'll see me playing some sort of Dungeons and Dragons or card game or something with my friends. It's one of my favorite things to do. Um, but how I got into this work is a very interesting story. I was not always disabled. I became disabled when I was 17 years old, and that was in high school. Overnight during the pandemic, I suddenly became disabled and developed a brain condition. And since that, my entire world became really different very, very suddenly. And I not only became aware of what it was like to be disabled from my own experiences, but how inaccessible the world was and how I had previously been living in a really privileged position, especially, and not understanding just how inaccessible things were to the world around me, not even with my own needs, but with my friends' needs. And so, in newly navigating how to advocate for myself as a disabled person, I also wanted to make sure that other people didn't have to advocate for themselves in the same way that I have had. And I find it really important to remove easy barriers where they're at because they're a lot easier to remove than people think. Um, and just, reminding people to not take for granted the privilege that they hold and that, you can become disabled any time. And I'm doing things not only for myself, but for you and your future. So that's why I got into this work.
I love that so much. I mean, I don't love that that's how you found out that you were going to be a great advocate, but I also love that you're like, this shit sucks. Holy crap. Why are things so inaccessible? Also, why are you abusing me? But why are you also abusing all these other folks? So that's where your advocacy fire comes from. I'm assuming, yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Beautiful. So, have you encountered any additional barriers being someone with a disability who's trying to navigate the world and trying to advocate for other people?
Yeah, definitely. I'll say that before I became disabled, people said I was quiet which I find really funny, because I'm now extremely loud, and many people would not describe me in that way. I definitely still have barriers in, getting to things, and there's certain sections of my advocacy where I know I could do better at, but I find that the times I'm the fiercest in my advocacy are when I'm advocating for others and my friends, because I do not mess around my friends and making sure that their needs are met and that they feel respected and welcome in spaces. Um, uh, but part of what's been really interesting about entering the disability community is that I have this amazing community around me of a lot of different people with a lot of different disabilities and needs. And that has strengthened my advocacy, because it's made me good at seeing, oh, that could be a problem for someone, or oh, I should tell my friend about this so that they can prepare for it. Just yeah, I hope that answered your question.
No, no, it totally does. And what's your experience been like being an advocate? Because I know for me, sometimes people don't, they assume that I'm not working for the organization that I'm advocating for them with, and they'll see me walking with my metal legs, and they'll be like, "Oh, are you here for help?" And I'm like, "No, I'm actually here to help." And so, have you had those kinds of experiences where people are like, "Oh, you're here, good for you, yay!" Um,
Definitely, when I first developed my disability, because currently now I have an invisible disability, so you probably can't tell that I have a disability by looking at me, but, I do have seizures and chronic pain as well as migraines and, stuff like that. But I hate when people say, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Don't be sorry, I've learned how to navigate it. It's just something that I live with like you live with your own things. But when I first became, disabled, I had very visible, tics, as well as, sometimes my head would jolt to the side, or different parts of my body would get stuck, and I had more bouts of paralysis than I do now. So I would look very visibly disabled to people, and there would be times where they would have assumptions made for me, when I was able to do something myself, or and didn't need help with something, that I was the person that was going to require help rather than me being the advocate, which always, sometimes the person with the invisible disability next to the person with the visible disability is the one that actually needs help. Maybe the person that has a visible disability is the one that is assisting and advocating. Just a thought.
no, absolutely. I lived with my lupus for so long, and it was invisible, and then when it became more visible, that's when people were like, "Oh, wait, you do have a disability?" And I'm like, been here for quite some time, and now it's just showing up because my flares have gotten worse and worse, and it got worse and worse because y'all didn't believe me, and
Yep.
this is what happened. You're welcome. So has it been difficult, like being in school and doing all this advocacy kind of work? Like, does that sometimes like cause flare ups? And like, how do you manage that, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, for sure. Well, my condition in particular is exacerbated by stress. So, stress management is key in making sure that I not only, prevent burnout, but also that I don't have flare ups. But even sometimes that's not preventable. I get very passionate in the work that I do, and I tend to put a lot of work and hours in, even when I maybe don't have those hours to spare. And so sometimes I will have migraine flare ups and, the occasional seizure, but to me, it's worth it, um, because I know that the work I'm doing is going to have a broader impact after I leave. But I'd say the best way that I manage it is that I keep three to do lists at once that are categorized and a strict calendar. And I go to bed every night at 10:30 and I wake up every day at 7. So I get good sleep and I stay really organized, and I think that's the only way I could manage not only my symptoms, but myself and all my commitments.
Oh my God, share your ways. Cause I sometimes my brain fogs get so bad. Like I have a million to-do lists, and I have all these post-its and all these reminders. And still sometimes my brain fog is like, you wrote my reminders? You put this in your calendar? What
Oh
is
my
this? I don't remember this. So share your ways with how you navigate being so organized and staying on top of your self-care. Cause I know for folks with chronic illnesses especially, that's so difficult, especially if you have to work and then you have class and you have all
Mhm.
these other things. It's like, how do you manage all that?
Yeah. So, and this is just what works for me, and it's okay if that doesn't work for other people. Everyone's gonna be different. Just like how, just like yeah. That's how I think of, accommodating disabilities. Everyone's gonna have different needs, and that's okay, and we can use universal design principles to the best of our ability, but at the end of the day, we have to, keep certain things in mind. But I keep a daily schedule, I keep an ongoing to-do list, and I keep my calendar. My calendar is where I put everything. If you wanna hang out with me, it's going in my Google Calendar. You will be getting a Google Calendar invitation from me. Doesn't matter if it's, "Hey, can we get coffee?" Google Calendar invitation. My ongoing to-do list, I have divided into 3 sections. My classes, where I map out the things I have to do for this week and next week. My work section, where put all of the meetings I have for all the different jobs I have, as well as the tasks that I need to do. And then I have a club section for when I play Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering, just to, give myself something to look forward to. Um, and what I do is I take my daily schedule and I sit with my calendar on one side of me and my ongoing to do list at the other side. And I start to put in, the things I do every day from my calendar into my daily schedule. And then I cross reference it with my ongoing to do list and I put all the tasks in between. And then I put little breaks in between so that I don't get overwhelmed. And I make sure part of what works really well for me is I start my semester a week early, so that I'm always working a week in advance, so if I do have a flare up, I'm right on track. Nothing is going to change. I put that in my schedule too. So cross-listing the tasks I have to do with my calendar into one daily schedule where I'm like, "Okay, I wake up, I read this play. That's gonna be done for that class for the week." So I don't have to, like, look at a bunch of things at once. I just have my daily schedule I make every Sunday. I know exactly what I'm gonna do, when I'm gonna do it, and it's spread out, so I know it's all gonna get done.
That's beautiful. I think I'm gonna steal a couple of those tools because that seems like a great way to keep yourself on track, and you put those little spaces in there just in case something happens so that you can't do it, so that you don't fall behind. I love
But
that.
breaks, give buffer time. Always, always give buffer time. Oh my goodness, especially in the disabled community, you wanna give yourself a little extra time.
No, that is so awesome. So you mentioned Dungeons and Dragons, and I that is so I've not played since I was a teenager, which was a long time ago. But that's so cool and that's so awesome. So do you find like a lot of joy in playing that, and can you play with your characters in a way that sort of, I don't know, highlights your disability a little bit in your character?
Yeah. Um, I have been playing since I was 7 no, I was 15. Yeah, I was 15 when I started playing, and so this group has played with me since I became disabled, and I actually vividly remember, my senior year, I was hospitalized, and I had to relearn how to walk, and I played Dungeons& and Dragons from my hospital room on Zoom because it was one of the few things that I looked forward to, so they're an amazing group, and this might, sound a little odd, but one of the characters that I used, her name was Isla, and she was like a cool witch character, and I gave her complete amnesia, and I gave my game master total, creative freedom to do whatever he wanted with a background. But part of that to me reflects that, part of with my condition is that my memory is not as great as it used to be. I forget a lot of things easier. I forget when I tell things to people easier. I have little gaps. Um, so I feel like in that way, that character is a manifestation of myself. But I know other people too that have used different spells to give their characters really cool prosthetics made of ice, like an ice hand or a water hand. And I think recently there was an update too, creating a wheelchair and making dungeons wheelchair accessible, which, cool Dungeons and Dragons. That's awesome. But I think that there's a really cool creative liberty that can be taken in Dungeons and Dragons, specifically with prosthetics. There's some really cool ways to do prosthetics in that game. But also, even just outside of playing Dungeons and Dragons too. One of my good friends, Katya, is a blind woman and she plays with us. And none of her characters have been blind, but it's been really interesting to learn ways to make the game more accessible. Like she loves when we give detailed descriptions about things. And so I've gotten into a good habit of, when I was 16, I started learning like, oh, this is what I should do with an image description when I'm putting things to show her. Um, or when she started playing with us, she was so excited because she found these braille dice for the first time. And now companies are starting to make them more out of metal and wood and all these different materials. So she doesn't just have to 3D print them anymore. So like not only being in the game as a disabled person and making disabled characters is cool, but seeing how the game can be made accommodating is also really cool.
I love that so much, and I love that you're involving other folks with disabilities where it can be just as accessible for them. And I think that that's something that is often completely forgotten about. People are always like, accessibility is so difficult, it's so hard. Like, I don't want to retrofit this, I don't want to make it that. And it's just like, no, no, not making something accessible is a choice. It doesn't have to be that way. And so I so love that y'all made that accessible, not just for your friend, but for you yourself as well. That's so awesome. So playing as a teenager and becoming disabled as a teenager, did you notice that there were people who didn't have disabilities who were suddenly like, ew, we don't want to? Because I know and granted, like I was a teenager many years ago, but I had a lot of people who were just like, oh, you're disabled now? We don't want to associate with you. And I'm just like, first of all, you're not going to catch my lupus. But also, I'm still me. I'm still the same person. I just had some shit get activated in my body, and now this is my new reality. So, did you have issues like that?
Yes, I would have to remind people all the time that I'm still the same person. I just, have different capacity to do things. And it was a big adjustment, especially for some of my friends. I was in high school, and I remember, describing some of the symptoms I was feeling, and someone told me, "Oh, if I had to experience that, I would just kill myself." And I feel like people say that stuff a lot, which is really unfortunate because I don't want to do that. I love myself and I think I'm worthy of life and its pleasures. Um, but, also people having to renavigate what they invite me to. I feel like we don't really talk about how much disability affects your social life because it really does. Um, and, I suddenly couldn't go to concert, anything with flashing lights, anything you can think of, party, concert, club, some bars, karaoke, I couldn't go to. And so, sometimes it would make me feel bad from people when they'd be like, "Oh, we can't go do this because of Sarah," or and that doesn't make you feel the greatest. Um, and so what I do prefer is, people being like, "Oh, that's not accessible for Sarah. Let's just go do this. This will be more fun anyways because we can all go." Or and that's not saying I don't mind if, someone wants to go to something with flashing lights. I just prefer being included most of the time. I think that's a pretty simple ask. Yeah.
No, that's totally such a simple ask. And like when I became an amputee, I suddenly started not, I got invited to nothing. And it was suddenly like I didn't exist anymore. And now I have many more people around me who recognize, like, of course, Eman wants to come to the club. Of course, she wants to come to the bar. Of course, she wants to hang out. So they make sure to invite me to places that are accessible that I can get into with my walker. Cause I'm just like, look, if you want me to come to this thing and there's steps, nope, sorry, no thank you, not doing it. Or if I have to stand for a long period of time, or if I have like there's it's good to be thought about that way, being intentional and proactive, because there's so many things that we can participate in. And if you're choosing things that I can't participate in, that's showing me that you're not thinking about me at all. And so I'm so glad that you've got friends who have been thinking about you in a different way, because that shows that they actually care about you as a friend, which is awesome. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So do you were saying that you do the Dungeons and Dragons for fun, and you do the advocacy because it's like you got a fire burning inside of you. What are the things do you do to like hold on to your joy?
Well, definitely Dungeons and Dragons gives me so much joy. Also, Magic the Gathering card game, really fun, really nerdy, which also I saw recently in a Facebook group that there was a blind Magic the Gathering player and someone brailled their cards for them so they wouldn't have to ask their opponents what their cards were saying, which is also pretty great. Yeah, I love playing Magic the Gathering. I love playing Dungeons and Dragons. I love seeing my partner. Oftentimes, I go to Haverford. My partner and I are both Philly based, so I'll just take the train on Wednesdays and Sundays, and I'll go see them, and I'll get a break, and it's very lovely and nice. We just get to hang out and watch something silly, like the Orville. Do you know the Orville? Yeah, that's a good show. Stuff like that. Unplug my brain a little bit. Um, I just love spending time with my friends. My friends are lovely company. I think I have good taste. And that is what gives socializing and being we have this place on campus called the Guest Center, GEST, and it is just a nexus of thought. Oh my god. Um, it's where all the philosophy and religion majors go at the end of the night. People are there till 4 a.m. just studying and talking and being silly and losing their minds about an assignment, and I am up there pretty much every night with my friends in those departments just talking about random things, and it is the highlight of my day.
I love that so much. That is so awesome. I kind of want to like teleport myself there just so I could be a fly on the wall and like listen to some of the conversations because sometimes I love talking to people, but sometimes I just want to listen to cool conversations. I'm just like,
You
ooh,
hear some interesting things. Also the furniture is incredible. Oh my gosh. It's like old furniture from Margaret Guest. Do you know the artist Margaret Guest?
mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's her
Yeah.
furniture. Yeah.
Nice. How'd they pull that?
One of our professors, I think, knew her before she
Oh,
passed. So a bunch of her art is up there, furniture is up there. There's like a kitchenette, and many of us will have tea late into the night while we look at Margaret Guest's paintings and talk to each other. It's pretty
yo,
phenomenal.
that is such a flex. Wow. I love that so much. Like I would totally be like talking about that on Blue Sky. I'm in the lounge looking at the painting and have a little picture, little cup of tea. Yeah, no, that's so cool. That is so
Me
awesome.
and Margaret hanging out,
Yes, me and Margaret hanging. I love that. That is so cool. And I love that you find ways to hold on to your joy in all kinds of big ways and little ways. And your friend sounds so cool and so encouraging. I love that.
Yeah.
That is so awesome. So, what is you talked about some of the things that make you happy. What are like I guess what are some advice that you would give to like people who are either, young and upcoming and have a disability or maybe newly diagnosed and have to deal with like life and work and school and all that stuff. Like what advice would you give them? Or what advice do you wish you got?
First, I wish I'd been told that disability is not a bad word. To be disabled is not an inherent negative, it is just an adjective. And to call yourself that is not a bad, evil, terrible thing. And it's okay. And, the definition of disability is constantly changing. It depends on the source that you look at. You can define yourself however you want to, as long as you get your needs suited. That is what I care about. Um, I'd also say there's nothing wrong with setting firm boundaries with people and also knowing your limits. In addition to, there's nothing wrong with being a strong advocate for yourself, advocating for your needs, especially in medical settings, because you know your body. Uh, I mean, you live in it. You probably know it best, and it's really important that you get physicians that care for you and take you seriously. Because oftentimes you will be disregarded, told that your symptoms are normal or that there's nothing showing up. Get all of the tests. Something will probably show up and validate exactly what you're feeling. Um, and on that vein, surround yourself with people that will treat you with respect, that will treat you the same as you were treated before you acquired your disability. Not so much in that they're going to act like you're still able to do all the things, but in that you're still the same person on the inside, no matter what your body is physically able to do. Um, yeah, I think that's what I'd tell them.
That is such great advice, because I think sometimes we're so convinced by like the non-disabled world that there's something wrong with us. And even if you're a little, like, I started showing symptoms when I was 14, and everyone made me feel like there was something wrong with me and it had to be fixed. And if it wasn't fixed, then that was the end of my life and it was all over. And like, I'm gonna be 42 in April. So clearly I've lived a whole lot of life and
Yeah.
I'm still here and I'm still gonna be here. And it's just wild how that people try to convince you that disability is so bad and wrong and negative, and it's just a thing that happens to people.
I agree, and I think it's also with the way that we define suffering for others, um, especially because everyone suffers differently. Everyone is going to deal with something, and someone might not think that they are suffering from their disability. It just might be an aspect of their life. Obviously, that's subjective, but you can't assign how someone's supposed to feel about certain parts of their life without living it or being that person. I think that's really important.
Now, I totally agree with that, and it's just so interesting how it's made to be a bad thing when it's not. It just depends on people's experience. And even if you're going through this bad thing, that doesn't mean that your life is just complete shit. And so I appreciate you bringing that up. And I think
Yeah,
that's great advice.
and, like sorry, in addition to that,
No, 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 keep going. Yeah.
I think that there's also, like it's fair to hold space for someone who is struggling with their disability or health things without assigning how they're supposed to feel about something. I mean, at the very beginning of developing my disability, it was really hard for me. Like, I'm not going to deny that. I had to relearn a lot of things. I had to adjust a lot of parts of my life. But oftentimes, the hardest part about developing my disability wasn't the disability itself, it's how other people treated me. And I think that's something really important for people to keep in mind, that oftentimes it's external things that affect you that can affect you more than the disability itself. Obviously, the disability is still allowed to affect you too. I just want to make it clear that there's space for all of these things at once. You can hold both candles.
No, that is so true. And I think sometimes people try to make it seem like it's so black and white, and it's not. And disability, especially in individual disabilities, like, I've never met someone with lupus like mine, and so
Mhm.
my experiences have been very singular just for me, but that doesn't take away from the fact that I've got lupus like a lot of these other women, and that their experiences have been different than mine, and I'm still living my life just like they are, and it doesn't take away from it. And sometimes I suffer, but sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's outside people making me feel worse about myself.
Exactly, and that's with anything in life, truly, with
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally. Yeah. No, that's such an important point that sometimes gets lost in the shuffle of all this stuff, because we've got so many things to do, so many doctors, so many medications, so many things that we have to like pay attention to with all this stuff. And it's like, but wait a minute, I'm just a person, y'all.
Yeah, and, I've been asked, like, "Oh, do I regret my disability?" And I think that's first a very personal question. If you're watching this, don't ask that to people generally. But I think my answer would be no, partially because it shaped me into the person that I am today, and it's made me such a strong advocate, and it's created an entire career for me. Like, I don't know where my life would be without my disability. I became fiercely involved in doing legal aid for, nonprofits that primarily help disabled people, which is why I do this work. Um, and I think I've honestly been made a better person from it.
I agree with that too. I have no idea where I'd be if I didn't have any of this, because it's been more than half my life, and I
Mhm.
don't know what I'd be doing. I'd probably I don't know what I'd be doing. So I can't even guess, I can't even assume. But I am grateful for the work I have been doing and being in this space, because I've learned a lot about myself and what I'm capable of, and how many people I've helped. And that's incredible that you've gone through that, and you still, and I think sometimes, like, I've had people be like, "Oh, Eman's overcome her disability so she can do all this stuff." And I'm like, "I've overcome it." And I'm literally like, I'm not a starfish. My legs didn't grow back. I didn't suddenly become cured from lupus. I still got nerve damage, have had heart attacks, strokes, all these things. And I'm like the Pokemon of the disabled community. So nothing's been cured. I've
We
been doing
don't
it the whole time.
It's not necessarily overcoming, it's just adapting, which disabled people are great at adapting.
Yes, very good at that.
Yeah.
We can adapt to literally anything and everything because that's literally what our bodies are doing all the
Yes.
time.
It's why I walk with an umbrella. If there's a flashing light on the road, I put an umbrella in front of my face so I don't have to see it.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Anytime, because I also have chronic migraines, and anytime I'm in paratransit, if they're like, because New York, there's constantly
Yeah.
sirens and cop cars and flashing lights, and I'm always like with the lights. I don't have an umbrella, but I'll like cover it up because. And sometimes people are like, "Why are you covering your face?" I'm like, "So I don't get a freaking mind-numbing migraine, and so
Yeah,
I'm just completely taken out of the rest of my day." Like, you
yeah.
know,
I'd be happy to send you these all great lenses that are good for diffusing light too. I'll send
heck
that to
yeah.
you for the
Thank
podcast.
you.
Yeah,
See y'all, we sharing resources, we sharing information, we giving y'all all the
exactly.
tea. Hell yeah. I love it so much. So I'm always very curious about people's partners as well, and how they've like, did have they been there with you the whole time? Did they have to adjust? Like, I know with my husband, he had no experience with any disability, anything. And when I met him, I had been an amputee 2.5 years. So I was still learning how to be an amputee while he was learning about all this disability stuff. So what's been your experience with your partner?
Yeah. My partner and I met when I was 17, and I had gotten my disability only a few months before, so I was still adjusting to it. And we started dating a couple months after we had met, and from the start, like, they were just incredible. They have always been the most accommodating person. I think on our first date, actually, I had a seizure in the Philadelphia Art Museum, and they carried me out. Um, yeah, um, they have never been a one thing, people sometimes can be afraid, of when I have seizures, which I understand it can be very scary to see from the outside, um, but they have never been afraid, and that is, I think, something really meaningful because it makes me feel less scary to others. I don't wanna feel scary to people. I don't want people to have to worry, and they never make me feel like they have to worry about me or like I'm a burden. I know if I have a seizure that they're gonna hold my head the right way and they're gonna talk me through it. I have always known that they're going to, make sure I'm okay, or whenever we got to a show and there's flashing lights, they put their hand over my eyes. And I can't even remember when they started doing stuff because they just did it. I don't even know if they, I think I might have been the first person that they'd had experience with seizures before, and I'm not sure how they got so good at it, but I think when they knew that they were going to date me, they just really put so much effort and care into making sure they could make me as comfortable and safe as possible, and I feel incredibly, incredibly lucky about that. Um, a year into dating is when I was hospitalized and had to relearn how to walk, and this was during like COVID times. So there was still a limit on how many people could be in your hospital room. And I was hospitalized for about 3 or 4 weeks in rehab, relearning how to walk, OT, PT. And so the only people that could visit me, because I was underage, were my parents. But they texted and called me every day. They bought me stuffed animals. They checked in on me. Um, they made me feel so cared for, and they were gentle, kind, and patient. And I still remember seeing them after I got out of the hospital. It was pretty amazing. But yeah, I think they are the epitome of accommodating, and I just feel very lucky to have them in my life.
I love that so much because there's so many stories of people who have a bad flare or something happens and then they get ghosted. And I had that happen to me so many times in my early 20s. I would just get ghosted. And I'd be like, you know what? You're actually doing me a favor. You're
Yes,
taking yourself out. Like the trash is taking itself out, and I don't got to deal with you no more. And
truly.
that's, because the support is so vitally important. And it's especially if you've got something that's chronic and not going anywhere. you can't have some dumpster fire person around because that will cause even more flares and
Y
make things
yeah,
worse.
you need reliability.
Mhm. Mhm. And the kindness that you were talking about and the care and like actually someone who wants to be proactive and intentional with you, like covering your eyes, like that's what's up, yo. Like I love that
Yeah.
so much.
We've been together for 4.5 years now. I'm very lucky, and I'm only,
Great.
for the viewers, I'm only 21, so we started dating at yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
girl. What's your secret? Oh my god, oh gosh. 21.
mhm, um, yeah, I'm 21, my partner and I started dating at 17 and 18, so they've been there the whole time, I just feel lucky I found someone like this at my age also.
That is so great because some of us in our 20s were not finding that. Like, I could tell you some story. I ain't gonna share all my stuff with y'all in the public, but I went through some things, and it's wild how some folks will really make you feel bad and wrong for having something that you can't control that's there, and they want to make you the bad guy for it. So I love that for you. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so if there was anything in the world that you could change, what would it be and why?
Oh, oh my gosh. That is a really hard question. Does it have to be in the vein of disability?
No, it could be anything, but anything you might want to change.
Hmm. Oof. Well, I think I'd get rid of borders. Um, I think now especially, it's very timely. Um, I think I'd get rid of borders. I think that, we as people should be able to move and do things how we like. I do not like the restrictive nature of borders, especially in keeping people out. Um, I don't like the way that our current government in the United States has become, well, has been, but has heightened its fascism. And it uses border as a pretty like prominent talking point. And I think that we see this everywhere too. I think that borders are the cause of a lot of different disputes, a lot of destruction and genocide and death. And that's something I'm personally not okay with. So why don't we get rid of them?
Hell yeah. And also, fun fact: borders have not actually been a thing for a very long time. Like that,
Yes.
and I don't think people understand. Like some of these borders are very, very new, and
And
they're
still
dictating. Yeah.
and still if you look at a globe, you could see different lines that are dotted because we don't even agree where these borders are. So why do we have them? Just a thought.
Same thoughts. I feel you on that so much, and I also think about that too as a disabled person living in the U.S., seeing this orange shit show go on, and trying to live through it and deal with it, and being like, oh crap, I can't. It's not like I could pick up and go someplace else because newsflash, y'all, other countries don't let disabled people move there. But also, that's a privilege. And it's so expensive to move in general. But try moving to another country, y'all. I don't got money like that. So it's like, what are you gonna do?
Yep. Yeah. It feels very trapping. And I studied abroad in Scotland when this stuff all started, right when he was inaugurated, and I chose to come back, and everyone kept asking me, "Why don't you just stay?" And I was like, "Okay, great point. I could have stayed in Scotland. You see my University of Edinburgh flag right there." At the same time, I felt really committed to coming back to the States, because I mean, personally, I think I am in a position of privilege where I can put myself on the line to ensure that others are kept safe that not many people have. And if I can do that, I should be there.
I love that. And I also love that, like, I think some people think that if they have a disability, they don't have power. but there are levels and layers, and I think sometimes the world forgets about intersectionality. Like, I know I have privilege as a light-skinned Black and Palestinian woman. I get away with things that my siblings will never get away with. But I know that other folks have more rights than I do, or more privilege than I do. And like, my husband's white, and he's put my body between him and like harm. Like, and that's how I knew. I was like, "Ooh, you're the one." Because you recognize allyship. You recognize that you're like, I'm going to use my power to protect you in this moment. Because I know, as a non-disabled white guy, I got more power than you in this situation.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. And like on that vein too, I saw something recently on Instagram where it feels like some people, specifically white people, are very uncomfortable with the idea of putting their bodies on the line when it comes to protest or putting themselves in between people of color when there's demonstrations. But I think that particularly that's scary because to them it's sacrificing their proximity to white privilege that they feel comfortable having. And I think that if you truly want to dismantle white privilege, you actually have to lose the benefits that it gives you. Just a thought.
Oh, you speak my language. Woo! I wish more people were more proactive with their thoughts on that. So, like, recognize, like, do you know why you want to hold on to your privilege? Is it because you're recognizing that, like, other people who don't have it are actually being totally systematically taken out? Like, come on now. You don't
Yep.
recognize that?
Part of getting rid of it doesn't mean it means that you don't get to benefit from it anymore.
For real. And
Yeah.
that's why we've seen the last couple of deaths that we've seen, because they recognize, they're like, oh, I'm going to use my privilege. And unfortunately, they lost their lives. But also, they understood the assignment, and they knew that that might happen. And they still did it anyway because they recognized that that allyship was more important than their privilege.
Yes, and I find it especially notable too with the recent deaths, murders that have been enacted by ICE that, there's been a lot of national outrage surrounding, 2 white people that have passed, which is horrible. It is horrible that they were murdered, but also there were a lot of Black and brown people too that have been murdered by ICE in the past month, in the past year that nobody is talking about. And I think that, if we're going to show care to people that were murdered by ICE that were white, I think we also need to show that care to the Black and brown bodies that have been put on the line not only by ICE in the past year, but in the past decades, centuries that we have forgotten about. Because, the United States has always been a violent police state for people of color, and now it is coming to a forefront because it is affecting non-white people. And I think that's something really important to keep in mind.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm very, I mean, I want, and also on one hand, like, technology is going, I think, a little too fast for a lot of people, and myself included. Because I'm like, oh my gosh, what the hell is this AI stuff doing? But also, I love that everyone has a smartphone in their hands so that they can actually document these things that are going on. Because in the
Yes,
past, people didn't have that, but now it's like, okay, no, we're gonna live stream this right now, which I think is
accountability.
powerful. Yes.
Mhm.
Definitely. No, I love that you brought that up, because I think sometimes folks forget that they have little bits of power, even in feeling powerless in certain situations.
Yes.
And yeah.
I mean, I feel like also too, as a disabled person, there's a lot of layers of activism, right? You can, I mean, if it's your thing, you can call representatives, you can actively help in organizing, you can do outreach, you can draft things, write things. There's a lot of things behind the scenes that we or disabled people can do that are not, being on the ground. But at the same time, if you want to be on the ground, you can do that too. I once marched blindfolded for 2 miles because there were so much police. I couldn't look around with the lights, but I had my friend guide me, and I was blindfolded protesting. And I felt safe. I felt protected by everyone around me. Not saying that's everyone's cup of tea, but I'm still glad I did it.
No, I love that you brought that up. Like, I think some people always assume, like, oh, you got to be out in the street, like, protesting and chanting and doing all the things. But there are so many roles as an organizer that you can do, especially as a person with a disability. Like, when my lupus was at its worst in my younger years, I would just be there ordering food for people. I would
Yeah,
just be making sure people got fed and that they were happy. I would sit there and take notes. I couldn't be in the protest specifically, but I was like, I'm gonna help you guys to stay fed and stay informed so that you can do the things that I physically can't do right now. And that
Yes.
made me feel powerful in the moment.
It's important work too, because how are people able to go out on the streets if they do not have food, if they do not have basic resources? And that's part of why people aren't able to organize, because they have to work to support themselves, or because they don't have access to X, Y, and Z. So if we give them those things, like, doing those roles behind the scenes, that's how we make real progress so that people can afford to protest.
Absolutely. There are a few folks that I work with in New York that came up with a little list of accessible ways to help out in the movement. And I so appreciated when they came out with it, because I'm just like, I don't think you guys understand just how much you're empowering folks with disabilities, because sometimes we feel powerless in it. And I tell people, no, no, you're not powerless. You can do all these things. But now there's a
Yes.
whole list, and you can pick a thing off a list and help out, and you're still part of it, and you don't have to put yourself in harm, especially if you have things going on. So
Yes.
I love that so much. That's great. um I guess one other thing I would want to ask um is there anything else that you want to share with people, to for them to get to know you more, or anything that you'd want people to know about you?
Yes. Um, I would love to talk about my current research that I'm doing. I am a classics major. What's that? It means that I study ancient Rome and ancient Greece. We're kind of a dying major that a bunch of old white men used to do a lot. It was like really sophisticated back in the day. And I accidentally fell into this major after doing a year of Latin at my college, because it was the only language that didn't meet every day, and it was the only language that didn't meet early in the morning. So I fulfilled the requirement. I was like, oh, okay, I guess this is my major now. And now I'm here. But I do love my major. And it's become weirdly a passion of mine. When I was a kid, I loved mythology too. So it kind of feels very full circle. For my senior thesis, I am comparing the plagues in Oedipus Rex and the Iliad to the plague in ancient Rome during Justinian's time when he was the emperor, to HIV in the 80s. And I'm doing that to discuss how we have, in Greek polytheistic religion, plague was used as a device for individual retribution from the gods, instead of something that was for, uh, or it was for something that as societies we agree is a universal wrong, rather than a specific set of morals that people might disagree on. But there's a shift in the plague of Justinian, specifically with the onset of certain views of Christianity. In plague becomes a device to impose specific sets of moral beliefs that are not universally agreed upon, and how that specifically impacts marginalized groups disproportionately. And through line that to HIV, where that doctrine still stands, in how um, plague is used as a device to blame people, specifically, homosexuals, people that use drugs, people that have premarital sex, as the cause of plague for moral failure. That's my thesis research.
Holy crap, that is so freaking cool. Wow. I that that I don't even, how did you even come up with that whole, because that's such a cool idea. Like, how did you even like formulate that whole idea to study that?
Yeah. Last year, I did a lot of research on the Plague of Athens. Plague of Athens. We only have 6 pages about the Plague of Athens in the world. This guy named Thucydides, he wrote about the Peloponnesian Wars, and he wrote a 6-page account of the Plague of Athens, an ancient plague. We still don't know what it is. People will try and retroactively diagnose it. They are wrong. They do not have enough information to retroactively diagnose it. Either way, it happened. And I was like, how do I draw my research about the plague of Athens and ancient plague into contemporary plague? And I specifically wanted to talk about less about the clinical sense, because last year I talked a lot about the clinical sense, but more about the social impacts of disease and how those can be measured when we don't have the clinical aspects of disease readily available. So instead of hypothesizing about what something could or could not have been, let's look at what we already have to look at how this impacted societies and how it disproportionately impacted specifically marginalized groups, and how that still like stands today. Um, And my parents are queer, my parents are lesbians. And so growing up, I'd always been exposed to queer media. I remember when my mom took me to Rent when I was like 12 years old, I'd always learned about HIV. And, I'd been shown pictures of like gay men's choirs as a kid where, most of the members were killed part by the United States negligence against the gay community during HIV. Um, and so it's a specific media topic I'm really passionate about. So I'm like, okay, I'm really passionate about this. I'm really passionate about this. All of this has to do with disease. How do I bring this together? And have you read The Right to Maim?
No, but I've heard of that. Book's on my list.
It's a great book. Um, but I wanted to talk about how from then to now, disease is used as a tool against marginalized groups of people. Um, it's not when we think of disease, it's not just a set of symptoms. It's a becomes a cultural disease in the way that it infects people's minds and places biases. So yeah.
That is so fascinating. Are you gonna like publish that, or are you just gonna do a presentation on it?
I'm probably going to publish. My draft is due April 7th. I'm already about halfway done my draft. It helps that I started doing this research on the Plague of Athens last year, even though it's not my main research. I'll find that a lot of the other sources I'm reading, Thucydides and his source is like the blueprint for most plague accounts, especially ancient. So it kind of ties back into everything. Um, but yeah, I should be done by the end of April. Things are looking good. It's really interesting, and I just found a smoking gun in my research, where apparently I'll have to do some more reading. So anyone, if you want to fact check me, I'm still researching, and I would love to hear from you. So if you want, reach out. I'd love to talk about it. Uh, the smoking gun was that apparently the cause of the plague in the Roman Empire, people blamed not only heretics but also homosexuals, which directly reflects what had happened in HIV, like directly.
No, why is it that history is constantly repeating itself? Like we have all these examples over the years of things that have happened more than once, and it's almost as if we just not we study all this history, but we don't pay attention, and then we repeat it again and again and again.
Because we don't read.
I feel like I say that all the time. I'm like, why are things messed up? Because people don't read.
People,
I
yeah.
Yeah. Oof. Oof, oof, oof. Well, we could talk about this for a long time because that is so fascinating, but it's just also so interesting how things are very connected still to the ancient times happening now because people just don't want to pay attention to the histories of things. They'd rather just sweep it under the rug and pretend it didn't happen. It's like, no, it did happen. And this is how we got to orange ass hat. Like, you guys.
Yeah, exactly. And like I'm pointing out specifically my thesis though that it doesn't have to be that way. Like there were plenty of, Christian religious groups that actively helped people with HIV and acted as support systems, accepted them into their church, and were the only support system some people had after their families abandoned them. But specific sectors like, do you know Bill Graham? Specific sectors like, Bill Graham and people that shared beliefs with him actively chose to be hateful. Like it's not the doctrine that defines it, it's the people and their own motivations that do.
Yeah, my mom was a fan of Family Radio and Billy Graham and that other guy Harold Camping and all that. Oh, it was a fun time growing up. Woo. Yeah. Woo. Yeah, wild as hell. But it just shows just how much work we still need to do to tackle all of that stuff and recognize that like we're human beings. Yes, we may have illnesses and disabilities and diseases, but that doesn't mean that we're just garbage or should be thrown away. Like we're humans and we should care about each other. Um, so yeah, wow, you are so interesting. This has been so cool. So how can people reach you and talk to, like if they want to reach out to talk about this research or talk about your advocacy work or just talk about you, like how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, you can absolutely message me on LinkedIn. I mean, you would know I reply pretty quickly.
Yes, I'll put a link in the show notes, y'all.
Yeah, please message me on LinkedIn. I would love to talk with you about classics or Dungeons and Dragons or Magic the Gathering or about disability, which is most of what I do in my work. Um, but whatever you have a question about, please just message me on LinkedIn. That's the best way to reach me.
Well, thank you so, so much for joining us today. This has been so fascinating. And I hope that people learned something about themselves, something about the ancients, about disease, about all the things, about how cool you are, about Dungeons and Dragons, because I haven't thought about that in quite some time. And yeah, you were so cool. So is there
You're so
anything else
cool.
you stop, stop. No, keep going. No, stop. No. So is there anything else that you'd like people to know before we close?
um, Follow and subscribe to this fantastic channel. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And all right then. Well, this has been another episode, y'all, of my so-called disabled life. And thank you all for watching. Bye, y'all.